Story 3 of Dastardly Criminals in Space. Edreed Short Sci-Fi, Volume 4. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Watchbird by Robert Sheckley. When Gelson entered, he saw that the rest of the Watchbird manufacturers were already present. There were 6 of them, not counting himself, and the room was blue with expensive cigar smoke. "Hi, Charlie," one of them called as he came in. The rest broke off conversation long enough to wave a casual greeting at him. As a Watchbird manufacturer, he was a member manufacturer of salvation, he reminded himself wryly. Very exclusive. You must have a certified government contract if you want to save the human race. "The government representative isn't here yet," one of the men told him. "He's due any minute." "We're getting the green light," another said. Fine. Gelson found a chair near the door and looked around the room. It was like a convention, or a Boy Scout rally. The 6 men made up for their lack of numbers by sheer volume. The president of Southern Consolidated was talking at the top of his lungs about Watchbird's enormous durability. The 2 presidents he was talking at were grinning, nodding, one trying to interrupt with the results of a test he had run on Watchbird's resourcefulness, the other talking about the new recharging apparatus. The other 3 men were in their own little group, delivering what sounded like panegyric to Watchbird. Gelson noticed that all of them stood straight and tall, like the saviors they felt they were. He didn't find it funny. Up to a few days ago he had felt that way himself. He had considered himself a pot-bellied, slightly balding saint. He sighed and lighted a cigarette. At the beginning of the project, he had been as enthusiastic as the others. He remembered saying to McIntyre, his chief engineer, "Mac, a new day is coming. Watchbird is the answer." McIntyre had nodded very profoundly, another Watchbird convert. How wonderful it had seemed then. A simple, reliable answer to one of mankind's greatest problems, all wrapped and packaged in a pound of incorruptible metal, crystal, plastics. Perhaps that was the very reason he was doubting it now. Gelson suspected that you don't solve human problems so easily. There had to be a catch somewhere. After all, murder was an old problem, and Watchbird too new a solution. "Gentlemen," they had been talking so heatedly that they hadn't noticed the government representative entering. Now the room became quiet at once. "Gentlemen," the pumped government man said, "the President, with the consent of Congress, has acted to form a Watchbird division for every city and town in the country." The men burst into a spontaneous shout of triumph. They were going to have their chance to save the world after all, Gelson thought, and worriedly asked himself what was wrong with that. He listened carefully as the government man outlined the distribution scheme. The country was to be divided into 7 areas, each to be supplied and serviced by one manufacturer. This meant monopoly, of course, but a necessary one. Like the telephone service, it was in the public's best interests. You couldn't have competition in Watchbird's service. Watchbird was for everyone. "The President hopes," the representative continued, "that full Watchbird service will be installed in the shortest possible time. You will have top priorities on strategic metals, manpower, and so forth." "Speaking for myself," the president of Southern Consolidated said, "I expect to have the first batch of Watchbirds distributed within the week. Production is all set up." The rest of the men were equally ready. The factories had been prepared to roll out the Watchbirds for months now. The final standardized equipment had been agreed upon, and only the presidential go-ahead had been lacking. "Fine," the representative said. "If that is all, I think we can—" "Is there a question?" "Yes, sir," Gelson said. "I want to know if the present model is the one we're going to manufacture." "Of course," the representative said. "It's the most advanced." "I have an objection." Gelson stood up. His colleagues were glaring coldly at him. Obviously, he was delaying the advent of the Golden Age. "What is your objection?" the representative asked. "First, let me say that I am 100% in favor of machine to stop murder. It's been needed for a long time. I object only to the Watchbird's learning circuits. They serve, in effect, to animate the machine and give it a pseudo-consciousness. I can't approve of that." "But, Mr. Gelson, you yourself testified that the Watchbird would not be completely efficient unless such circuits were introduced. Without them, the Watchbirds could stop only an estimated 70% of murders." "I know that," Gelson said, feeling extremely uncomfortable. "I believe there might be a moral danger in allowing a machine to make decisions that are rightfully man's, he declared, doggedly.
"Oh, come now, Gelson,"
one of the corporation presidents said.
"It's nothing of the sort. The Watchbird will only reinforce the decisions made by honest men from the beginning of time."
"I think that is true," the representative agreed. "But I understand how Mr. Gelson feels. It is sad that we must put a human problem into the hands of a machine, sadder still that we must have a machine enforce our laws. But I ask you to remember, Mr. Gelson, that there is no other possible way of stopping a murderer before he strikes. It would be unfair to the many innocent people killed every year if we were to restrict Watchbird on philosophical grounds. Don't you agree that I'm right?" "Yes, I suppose I do," Gelson said unhappily. He had told himself all that 1,000 times. Something still bothered him. Perhaps he would take it up with McIntyre. As the conference broke up, a thought struck him. He grinned. A lot of policemen were going to be out of work. "Now, what do you think of that?" Officer Celtrix demanded. 15 years in homicide and a machine is replacing me. He wiped a large red hand across his forehead and leaned against the captain's desk. "Ain't science marvelous?" 2 other policemen, late of homicide, nodded glumly. "Don't worry about it," the captain said. "We'll find a home for you in larceny, Celtrix. You'll like it here." "I just can't get over it," Celtrix complained. "A lousy little piece of tin and glass is going to solve all the crimes." "Not quite," the captain said. "The watchbirds are supposed to prevent the crimes before they happen." "And how'll they be crimes?" one of the policemen asked. "I mean, they can't hang you for murder until you commit one, can they?" "That's not the idea," the captain said. "The watchbirds are supposed to stop a man before he commits a murder."
"And no one arrests him?"
Celtrix asked. "I don't know how they're going to work that out," the captain admitted. The men were silent for a while. The captain yawned and examined his watch. "The thing I don't understand," Celtrix said, still leaning on the captain's desk, "is just how do they do it? How did it start, Captain?" The captain studied Celtrix's face for possible irony. After all, Watchbird had been in the papers for months. But then he remembered that Celtrix, like his sidekicks, rarely bothered to turn past the sports pages. "Well," the captain said, trying to remember what he had read in the Sunday supplements, "these scientists were working on criminology. They were studying murderers to find out what made them tick. But they found that murderers throw out a different sort of brainwave from ordinary people. And their glands act funny, too. Now this happens when they're about to commit a murder. So these scientists worked out a special machine to flash red or something when these brainwaves turned on." "Scientists," Celtrix said bitterly. "Well, after the scientists had this machine, they didn't know what to do with it. It was too big to move around, and murderers didn't drop in often enough to make it flash. So they built it into a smaller unit and tried it out in a few police stations. I think they tried one upstate, but it didn't work so good. You couldn't get to the crime in time. That's why they built the watchbirds."
"I don't think they'll stop no crimes,"
one of the policemen insisted. "They sure will. I read the test results. They can smell him out before he commits a crime, and when they reach him, they give him a powerful shock or something. It'll stop him."
"You're closing up homicide, Captain?"
Celtic asked. "No," the captain said. "I'm leaving a skeleton crew in until we see how these birds do."
"What?"
Celtic said. "Skeleton crew? That's funny." "Sure," the captain said. "Anyhow, I'm going to leave some men on. It seems the birds don't stop all murders."
"Why not?"
"Some murderers don't have these brainwaves," the captain answered, trying to remember what the newspaper article had said. "Oh, their glands don't work or something." "Which ones don't they stop?" Celtrix asked with professional curiosity. "I don't know, but I hear they got the damn things fixed, so they're going to stop all of them soon."
"How are they working that?"
"They learn. The watchbirds, I mean, just like people."
"You're kidding me."
"No." "Well," Celtrix said, "I think I'll just keep old Betsy oiled just in case. You can't trust these scientists."
"Right. Birds,"
Celtrix scoffed. Over the town, the watchbird soared in a long, lazy curve. Its aluminum hide glistened in the morning sun, and dots of light danced on its stiff wings. Silently it flew. Silently, but with all senses functioning. Built-in kinesthetics told the watchbird where it was, and held it in a long search curve. Its eyes and ears operated as one unit, searching, seeking. And then something happened. The watchbird's electronically fast reflexes picked up the edge of a sensation. A correlation sensor tested it, matching it with electrical and chemical data in its memory files. A relay tripped. Down the watchbird spiraled, coming in on the increasingly strong sensation. It smelled the outpouring of certain glands, tasted a deviant brainwave. Fully alerted and armed, it spun banked in the bright morning sunlight. Denelli was so intent he didn't see the watchbird coming. He had his gun poised, and his eyes pleaded with the big grocer.
"Don't come no closer."
"You lousy little punk," the grocer said, and took another step forward.
"Rob me, I'll break every bone in your puny body."
The grocer, too stupid or too courageous to understand the threat of the gun, advanced on the little thief.
"All right,"
Denelli said in a thorough state of panic.
"All right, sucker, take—"
A bolt of electricity knocked him on his back. The gun went off, smashing a breakfast food display.
"What in hell?"
the grocer asked, staring at the stunned thief. And then he saw a flash of silver wings.
"Well, I'm really damned. Those watchbirds work."
He stared until the wings disappeared in the sky. Then he telephoned the police. The watchbird returned to its search curve. His thinking center correlated the new facts he had learned about murder. Several of these he hadn't known before. The new information was simultaneously flashed to all the other watchbirds, and their information was flashed back to him. New information, methods, definitions were constantly passing between them. Now that the watchbirds were rolling off the assembly line in a steady stream, Gelson allowed himself to relax. A loud, contented hum filled his plant. Orders were being filled on time, with top priorities given to the biggest cities in his area, and working down to the smallest towns.
"All smooth, Chief,"
McIntyre said, coming in the door. He had just completed a routine inspection. "Fine, have a seat." The big engineer sat down and lighted a cigarette. "We've been working on this for some time," Gelson said, when he couldn't think of anything else.
"We sure have,"
McIntyre agreed. He leaned back and inhaled deeply. He'd been one of the consulting engineers on the original Watchbird. That was 6 years back. He'd been working for Gelson ever since, and the men had become good friends. "The thing I wanted to ask you was this." Gelson paused. He couldn't think how to phrase what he wanted. Instead, he asked, "What do you think of the Watchbirds, Mac?"
"Who, me?"
The engineer grinned nervously. He had been eating, drinking, and sleeping Watchbird ever since its inception. He had never found it necessary to have an attitude.
"Why, I think it's great."
"I don't mean that," Gelson said. He realized that what he wanted was to have someone understand his point of view. "I mean, do you figure there might be some danger in machine thinking?"
"I don't think so, Chief. Why do you ask?"
"Look, I'm no scientist or engineer. I've just handled cost and production and let you boys worry about how. But as a layman, Watchbird is starting to frighten me."
"No reason for that."
"I don't like the idea of the learning circuits."
"But why not?"
Then McIntyre grinned again.
"I know. You're like a lot of people, Chief. Afraid your machines are going to wake up and say, 'What are we doing here? Let's go out and rule the world.' Is that it?"
"Maybe something like that," Gelson admitted.
"No chance of it," McIntyre said. "The Watchbirds are complex, I'll admit, but an MIT calculator is a whole lot more complex, and it hasn't got consciousness."
"No, but the Watchbirds can learn."
"Sure, so can all the new calculators. Do you think they'll team up with the Watchbirds?"
Gelson felt annoyed at McIntyre, and even more annoyed at himself for being ridiculous. It's a fact that the Watchbirds can put their learning into action. No one is monitoring them.
"So that's the trouble,"
McIntyre said. "I've been thinking of getting out of Watchbird." Gelson hadn't realized it until that moment.
"Look, Chief,"
McIntyre said.
"will you take an engineer's word on this?"
"Let's hear it."
"The Watchbirds are no more dangerous than an automobile, an IBM calculator, or a thermometer. They have no more consciousness or volition than those things. The Watchbirds are built to respond to certain stimuli and to carry out certain operations when they receive that stimuli."
"And the learning circuits?"
"You have to have those,"
McIntyre said patiently, as though explaining the whole thing to a 10-year-old.
"The purpose of the Watchbird is to frustrate all murder attempts, right? Will only certain murderers give out these stimuli. In order to stop all of them, the Watchbird has to search out new definitions of murder and correlate them with what it already knows."
"I think it's inhuman," Gelson said.
"That's the best thing about it. The Watchbirds are unemotional. Their reasoning is non-anthropomorphic. You can't bribe them or drug them. You shouldn't fear them either."
The intercom on Gelson's desk buzzed. He ignored it. "I know all this," Gelson said. "But still, sometimes I feel like the man who invented dynamite. Thought it would only be used for blowing up tree stumps."
"You didn't invent Watchbird."
"I still feel morally responsible because I manufacture them." The intercom buzzed again, and Gelson irritably punched a button. Reports are in on the first week of Watchbird operations, his secretary told him. How do they look? Wonderful, sir. Send them in 15 minutes. Gerson switched the intercom off and turned back to McIntyre, who was cleaning his fingernails with a wooden match. Don't you think that this represents a trend in human thinking?